Hello and welcome to First Geek 411's book club. We are back with another installment of Banned Book Summer. Um, woo. Today we are reading Looking for Alaska by John Green. Oh, look at me getting it to focus and everything.
Proud of you.
Before we get started, remember you can find us on the social medias, First Geek 411 on Facebook and Instagram. Join our Discord server. Shoot us an email at onestgeek411@gmail.com. Watch live on our Twitch every Monday night at 6:45 Mountain Time and find all our videos on YouTube. You can also check out our Redbubble store. I'm Shanine, and with me I have Emma.
Hi, I'm ready.
And Cameron.
I'm also ready. Let's go.
Woo! All right, so as I mentioned, this is our second installment of Banned Book Summer. You can check out last month's book club of the Freedom Writers Diaries. Super good read, super fun book club. And now we are reading our first ever Nerd Fighter read for the book club, Looking for Alaska by John Green. In which Miles, your pretty average teen boy, whose one quirk is an obsession with people's last words, leaves home to attend a boarding school in Alabama, where he meets Alaska, a moody and mysterious teen girl. Miles is searching for purpose and meaning in life, and Alaska is trying to escape her pain. But, of course, being teenagers at a boarding school, this translates into smoking, drinking, kissing, and playing pranks on their nemeses. Until one night when Alaska is killed in a car crash. Miles becomes consumed with discovering the circumstances of Alaska's final moments and must learn how to deal with his guilt and grief. All right. What is your 3-word reviews to kick us off?
It's not 3 words, but concise. Reminds me of high school in the way that this wasn't my high school experience in the book, but because I read it in high school.
I'll say shouldn't be banned is my review.
Yeah.
Ooh. Spoiler alert.
We'll talk about that specifically later on in a future question, but the fact that this is on banned book lists is absurd.
It's wild. It's very absurd.
Don't get me started now, but you can get me started later.
Don't rile me up.
For now, I'll just say still really good. All right. So have you read Looking for Alaska or any other John Green books before?
Yes. Obviously. I was a huge John Green nerd in high school, as mentioned previously. I was a big Green Brothers follower. So, of course, I was in the know for everything John Green, Hank Green related. Still kind of am, honestly. Because, of course. But yes. Looking for Alaska, Paper Towns, The Fault in Our Stars, all of the things. It was my jam. And this one I remember. This one and The Fault in Our Stars I remember the most. So.
For me, I honestly don't know how I dodged John Green books so much. I'm really surprised that I never read any of these in high school, especially because I got back into reading some junior senior year of high school, and I was reading quite a bit at that time, and so I don't know exact let me go to Storygraph, but I don't remember the exact release dates of these books, but I am pretty surprised that I somehow managed to yeah, some of them did come out while I was in high school. And so yeah, I don't really know how I managed to dodge these. But yeah, this is my first time interacting. Like I know John and Hank much more from YouTube than I do from like actual books. And so this is my first time interacting with any of John's works.
Um, was maybe a bit more of a casual nerd fighter than Emma. Um, but I did definitely go through a big John Green YA novels phase. Um, like I mentioned off screen, I have my John Green stack on my bookshelf. Um, yeah, I was very into his novels. Um,
I
and
have. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt very quickly. On my desk, what is called the Drive, and it is something that Hank Green sold for a while. That is a thumbnail with all of the music, or not a thumbnail, a thumb drive, that all of the music that he ever wrote, as well as a signed $2 bill. And I asked for this for my birthday one year because I was such a big Hank Green fan. So I have the drive that sits on my desk because it is all four of his albums and all of his singles. Continue.
Um, and yes, speaking of Looking for Alaska specifically, I have also watched the mini series of it, um, which I believe was a fairly good adaptation. So if you haven't seen it, I do recommend that as well. Um, but yes, and it was also very interesting coming back to Looking for Alaska since last reading it. I don't think I read it in high school. I think I was like recently graduated. Um, but definitely closer to high school then than I am now. Um, it's very interesting going back and reading it as an adult and being like, oh, yeah, this does feel like high school. Like these teenagers
Yeah.
are definitely teenagers.
Yeah.
Um, so knowing that this is a banned book, did anybody approach reading it any differently?
No. I mean, kind of like you, I approached it with much more of the like, hey, I've read this book at least twice in high school. I wonder what I'm going to think of it now as an adult, with an adult perspective, which was definitely much different, but also in the like, I can see why I liked this as a high schooler. So definitely I approached it more from that side of the line, whatever the line is, rather than like this is a banned book, just because I knew I had attachment to it as a teenager, um, and was just more curious as an adult. Um, but at the same time, I went into it with like, of course, people would want to ban John Green books. Like, of course, people would want to target him as someone who is known to not exactly be the most conservative person in the world. So, yeah, that was much more my like approach of like, of course people would want to ban a John Green book, like on the teenage experience.
Yeah.
So,
So for me, I kind of like we talked about with last time. I feel like I go into it of like, oh, when are we going to get to the part that gets this book banned? And I feel like through osmosis, I knew that John had a book that dealt with like teen suicide, and so like I feel like it became like it's pretty apparent early on that that's this book. Um, but like with that, like that was my assumption going into it, is like that was going to be the reason that it was banned. And so like it was actually something that like I had to look up afterwards, and I was like, why is this like even talked about being banned? And I was like, oh, okay, sure. And like I said at the beginning, I think it's pretty laughable, but like, um, and so yeah, like I was kind of surprised that like why I thought this book would have been banned is not even the reason that people are like worried about it. So, or at least the ones that I saw were not worried about it.
I think kind of coming at it from a different angle than Emma, I don't think that John Green is like the most liberal writer to be out there either. And when I
You're
heard that
right.
his books
He's
are
just
being
also not the
banned,
most conservative.
no, for sure, but also definitely like I find him to be very reasonable and not
Yeah.
terribly scandalous, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not just like looking for Alaska. I think most of his young adult novels have been banned at least once somewhere,
Or at least
which is
challenged.
wild. Wild to me. Um because they are dealing with like very real, very difficult, but very relatable teenage experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And like, but you know, you got that one scene in there, so uh
The one scene those parents don't like, and it's game over.
yeah. Um so yeah, when I first heard that this book was banned, I was so shocked, and then was like, "Oh, of course it is. Of course." And yeah, it was interesting reading it again, like going into it and being like, "Ooh, like how scandalous is this scene really?" And we'll discuss that later.
Yeah.
But spoiler alert, it's not.
Yeah.
All right. What are our thoughts on our main character, Miles, aka Pudge?
The Pudgester.
You go, Cameron.
And like he's such like a generic MC. Like like he is just like your most like nerdy, sheltered MC that like is definitely socially awkward, and like um it's just like it's so funny just how like stereotypical this character is. And like Pudge is fun. Pudge is probably someone that like would have been on like the fringes of my friend group in high school. But like again, it's just so funny seeing like like Pudge basically never does anything unexpected. Like it's like every choice that he makes throughout the book is like it's the trope of like your main character should have agency, things shouldn't just happen to them, and everything just happens to Pudge. Like the like literally every other character has so much agency in this book except for him, and he's just like, well, the colonel's my roommate, I guess we're friends now. Like here we are. Like it's just like, oh, the colonel's friends are my friends, okay. Like he's just so passive, and like again, like I love Pudge is great, but just like so like straightforward.
He is your generic high school NPC, basically. With a fascination with the last words, the dying words of famous people, which, like, I think I remember thinking in high school when I read it, like, that's such a weird thing for any high schooler to have an interest in. But now I'm like, no, I was that weird kid who had a fascination with marine biology and weird things. So, like, that was like the one thing Pudge had going for him that was like kind of a unique characteristic. But
Mm-hmm.
also definitely like I knew several people in high school, like you said, Cameron, who were that like just hung out on the fringes of friend groups. So like he's there and things happen to him,
Mm-hmm.
and the side characters and the non-main characters were the more interesting things that were going on.
Yeah, I enjoy Miles. He's so painfully real
Mm-hmm.
in that he is very much a teen boy, and he's
Yep.
doing teen boy things, and he's thinking about teen boy things.
Yep.
He's smart, and he's trying in school. He's attempting to think about big things. He's rebelling in a responsible manner.
Yeah.
He's a sweet kid, and he's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think. And it's definitely interesting seeing the story through his perspective, because you're right, Cameron. He does not really have a lot of agency in the matter of anything.
Yeah.
He's
He's like basically just along for the ride for the whole book.
um but he's still a wildly unreliable narrator. Um
Oh yeah.
um yeah, which will lead into our next question, I guess, is Miles loves and adores Alaska. It basically worships the ground she walks on. And that is the story that he is telling.
It
However,
sure
I think
is.
it is fairly
Yep.
apparent to everyone else that maybe there's something else going on. What are our thoughts on Alaska?
Look, he's really into her. He's trying his best. She's got other problems to deal with that are, yeah, she's got other, like, she's a friend. They're there. They hang out, same friend group. There's just a lot going on in her own personal world that I think she makes a good, like, character to, like, almost like hold a mirror up to Pudge and be like, hey, maybe your life is something that you need to think about a little bit, but also I am not the person to hold that mirror up for you, so do it yourself.
I think Alaska is like such a funny character in this book, just because like again, there's so much of the like from Pudge's perspective, and like you hit on this of like he worships the ground that she walks on. Of so much of like she says the best things, she does all of this stuff, then she just kind of vanishes, and like, and then we find out like reasons for that later on. But like, it's so funny to like see his just like blatant like admiration of this person and like his completely biased takes on everything that she does. And it's just so like again, it's so transparent and it's so high school. Like I like definitely felt that part of this story of just like trying to deal with like that first like the first like major crush that like everyone's at an age that they can like have feelings like your first like high school crush versus like liking people at like middle school or like late elementary school age. And so it's just so funny to like see this side of it and just this crazy over the top way. um Like, that being said, like, man, Alaska, you got problems that you have just not gotten fixed. Like, one of my favorite jokes about God of War is it's like Kratos will do anything other than going to therapy. And like, that's definitely like the vibe here with
Yeah.
Alaska of like, I know this was a very different like mental health time, like being like mid 2000s that this book came out, but like, girl, like, you've been through a lot and it's okay that you've been through a lot. Let's go talk it through with a counselor. And
Your
like,
parents let you pick your name off a map.
yeah.
You think that's cool, but that's really not normal.
Yeah. Um, and like, obviously, like, Alaska has been through some traumatic stuff, and it's just the like, um, learning and having like the skills to get through it would have been so valuable for people that are in like that situation. And like, again, hope we're in a better place now where mental health is hopefully treated much better. But like, Alaska definitely needs to go see a therapist. Like,
Yeah, no, 100%. It's like I just feel like so much compassion for her because she has gone through so much trauma and honestly seems to be struggling with some other mental health things as well, like potentially bipolar disorder. Like there's some um, behaviors going on with her that are just not entirely neurotypical. And yeah, she would benefit from some professional help. Um, and yeah, I think on another note, John Green gets a bit of a bad rap for writing manic pixie dream girls all the time. And on the one hand, like Pudge definitely sees Alaska as a bit of a manic pixie dream girl. Um, but I think as readers, we are not supposed to be in love with her. Um, Pudge is called out multiple times for not knowing Alaska and for
mm-hmm.
not seeing her the way that she really is. Um, so stop coming after John Green for Manic Pixie Dream Girls. Um, and my copy of the book had some discussion questions in the end. And one of the questions that John Green had was, do you like Alaska? And do you think it's important to like the characters that you read about?
I think with Alaska specifically, it can go either way as to whether or not you like her, but there is more of a sense of like, at least there should be some amount of sympathy towards her own situation with her mom dying and all of these things that have impacted her life. And as been mentioned, like she clearly has some like mental disabilities and or just like, you know, things that she should be going to therapy for that she hasn't, and is very much in a position as a teenager that no teenager should be in.
Mm-hmm.
So like she is very much a character of like, even if you don't like her as a person, like it's, you can sympathize with her and like want to help her because of the position she is in.
I read a review or saw like a comment about this book that I was like, I blame reading this in high school for giving me an I can fix her complex. Um, and I think like with this question, and this kind of builds off what Emma just said. I think we're supposed to feel for Alaska. Like, Alaska is like, and as we talked about, clearly going through a lot and is an extremely hypocritical person. like is
Hmm.
extremely um like someone who holds everyone to a high standard and holds herself to a high standard, and is like, when she messes up, it's, oh, I messed up, but when somebody else messed up, it's like a friendship ruining thing. um and I think that like we're supposed to see her, especially with like the way that she treats Pudge, of like we're supposed to see that as like a character flaw. Like it's like, and maybe this is like me reading this as like a mid 30s versus reading this in high school, but like reading this and seeing like their makeout scene not as like this great moment for like Pudge, but as this like, girl, what are you doing to him? Like, especially with like, again, with Pudge being so unsubtle and being so stereotypical of like the high school guy that's in love with this girl who has a boyfriend, like,
Yep.
and seeing like that side of things, or even stuff that happens earlier where it's the like, there's like, I forget the exact quote, but it's like it's hard when you have a boyfriend but there's a cute boy next to you, like something like that. Like she just says that to Pudge, and I'm just like, that is an awful thing to say to somebody. Like,
Especially when you know they like you.
right, right. And this isn't like y'all have a fun platonic relationship. Like he obviously isn't like at least infatuated with her. Like we don't necessarily
Yep.
have to say he's in love with her, but like he's at least extremely like into her. And like just to like say that in a situation, or like go through this thing of like arranging for him to stay over Thanksgiving break, like all of these things, it's just like so many mixed signals. And like I think we're supposed to feel for her through all of that, like we're supposed to like see and like kind of recognize her pain as we get further and further, and see her like trying to cope and like try to deal with all of the stuff that has gone on before. um, and I think that that's something that like, again, we don't have to like her, but like I think finding her, like finding a way to connect and sympathize with her, I think is the important part of this book. I feel like that was a long walk, but we got there.
No, yeah, I agree with both of you. I think, yeah, having someone like her in your life would not be an enjoyable experience just because she's so hot and cold and
Mm-hmm.
kind of impossible to deal with, and does not apologize for her behavior ever. Um, but I think, yeah, we are able to understand her as a character. Um, and so she gets to get away with it as a
Mm-hmm.
character. Were there any standout side characters for you?
The Colonel was a wild roommate. What an interesting person to have as a roommate, ultimately. The Colonel and then the Eagle. Just like seeing someone of some kind of authority from a teenager's perspective as someone who is no longer a teenager. It's fun to see. Like the Eagle was what, the principal?
He's like the
The whoever,
groundskeeper is kind of the
the
vibe that I got
groundskeeper,
of like.
just anyone who's like authority or even just like side, not fully authority, but like whatever. Like seeing adults from a teenager's perspective is
Mm-hmm.
is cool. But the Colonel definitely was the like fascinating, like you are an individual of your own
So
making.
according to synopsis, the eagle is a dean, like the dean of the school.
Yeah.
So not like, not groundskeeper, but yeah, he just is like the guy that lives there and is like,
Yeah.
um, I liked Laura, um, and like talking about Pudge being an unreliable narrator. I love that Laura just appears in the story. Of like, it's like she's been here the whole time. And
Yep.
like, I think that that's so funny of like, and it's like so stereotypical like high schooler of like Pudge has no perception of this person until like Alaska's like, I think you should date her. I'm going to start inviting her to things so that you can date her. Like, it's just so out of nowhere. And like, I think Laura's really fun. Like Laura, like of the people in this book, Laura's the one that I would like most want to be friends with. Um, and like, I definitely wish she had more to do in this book. Besides, a scene that we'll talk about later, but, like I really liked what like the parts of this that she gets to be a part of, and like I feel like she is a really interesting foil to like the Colonel and Alaska, especially where like Laura is like actually a good friend, and the Colonel is too, like relatively speaking. um but like Laura just like so much like cares about these people, and like is so hurt that when Pudge just like withdraws, like it's so hard there, and like I felt for her so much of just like again she kind of appears and kind of disappears on like these whims of Pudge.
Yeah, Lara's a standout for me too. I think she's just truly the MVP. Like, she's just the kindest and sweetest person and did not deserve Pudge
No,
to happen to her. And
to
Pudge
happen to
definitely
her is a great
did
way to
not
say that.
deserve her. Um,
He's
I
too good
just
for Pudge.
she's
Yeah, she's
so
way too good for
wonderful.
Pudge.
And yeah, just especially at the end when she's like, "Hey, you messed up." And he's like, "Yeah, I did. You're right. And I'm sorry." And she's like, "Okay, I forgive you. We're friends again." And I'm like, "Girl,
Yeah.
I just love her." Were there any standout moments?
There's a scene from Paper Towns that I always confuse for this book, for coming from this book, because I feel like it fits this book better, which is unfortunate because the scene is one where the main character is looking for the other sort of main character of Paper Towns and ends up in a strip mall, an abandoned strip mall, because he thinks that all of the clues this other character has left behind that hasn't actually been left behind are leading him to her in this abandoned strip mall, which fits these characters better.
That does
Which
seem
is
like a
just,
prank Alaska would play.
yeah, which is a complete side rant of like, there is a moment that stands out to me, but it's not a part of this book. But it's something Alaska would do. um, I gotta think of something that is not a separate John Green book. So,
Yep.
Cameron, you
I'll
go.
say for me, like having the big prank and then like the barn, like those scenes, like those couple handful of chapters where like they're all like checked out for the weekend, but they're like on campus hanging out in the barn, like as they try to pull off this big prank. Like I think that was a super cool set of scenes, especially getting to like we get the build up for like the Colonel being this great planner and like Alaska being this idea person, and like getting to actually see them like execute something like that, I think was really cool. We've talked about this with some of our other books of like if you tell us your character is smart but everyone else is just dumb, like that doesn't feel like a thing. But like getting that scene and like actually getting to see it work out and then see it also kind of get messed up, like we get to kind of see that like again the like Alaska is impulsive, and like they have the plan and like Alaska makes a decision that like could have jeopardized the whole plan in the heat of the moment. And so I do think it's really interesting to see um, and get to see them try to like figure that out. Also, shout out to the goose, um, the real
Is the
MVP.
goose. Yeah. Okay. I found my moment. This one that I like. Um, that's when he's sitting in class and he's staring out the window, and the teacher calls him out for it and then kicks him out. And then Alaska stands up and is like, "That's silly. You have high expectations for us, but then give us no window of grace, no period of grace or whatever for like having a bad day. So if you're gonna kick him out, I'm gonna leave too." And it's just calling out the institution on like having these expectations, but not
Mm-hmm.
giving, teenagers who are learning everything for the first time some amount of like mercy for spacing out a little
For
bit and
what
just
would be
needing,
the most boring class.
yeah, the most boring class.
I would have
Um,
slept through that class every day and constantly been in
yeah,
trouble.
yeah. Um, so that was just one moment of like, yeah, you know what? It's not entirely fair of you to kick a student out who ultimately is not the worst behaved student in the world. Um, and just like kick them out for looking out the window and getting a little lost. So that was a moment that stood out to me.
I think my standout moment is their like Alaska memorial prank.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I
Again, where
think
Laura steals the show.
totally love her. Um, yeah, I think that it's like wild and silly and over the top, but is kind of a surprisingly healthy way for them to be dealing with their grief,
Mm-hmm.
is doing this thing that doesn't really hurt anybody, just in memory of Alaska. And that even the eagle recognizes that. Like, he comes and does the obligatory, like, don't do that again.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, that kind of enjoyed it anyways.
Yep.
Yeah, I just love that.
Mm-hmm. As someone who's like been like the authority figure in situations like that, it's like, oh, you got me. But like,
Yep.
it's the like, you are not sneaky at all. We definitely know what has happened, but I liked it, so you're not in trouble.
We're not gonna actually give you any consequences because I can't blame you for that move. Very much you know what? Good on you. Every teenager needs those moments of leeway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it does also show the eagle as like a really good authority figure. Like, throughout Pudge's narrating, like, he does come across like very strict and like kind of goofy and clueless, but is like, I think he actually did know his students really well and really cared about them a lot. So I like it.
Yeah.
Did you have any dislikes?
I think this is one of those books where like if I hadn't read it as a teenager and had that personal like attachment to it from that perspective as myself a teenager, I wouldn't have enjoyed it reading it as much as an adult, which isn't so much a reflection on like if it's good or bad, so much as just I wouldn't have had as much of a personal attachment to the characters' experiences. Um, like now as an adult if I hadn't read it as a teenager first and gone like, oh yeah, I had some kind of past experience of like relating to these moments as a teenager, even if I wasn't that kind of teenager. Um, so like I like me now, not the target audience for this book, which like isn't really a dislike. It's just more of a but like because I was at one point the target audience for this book, it's better. It's kind of a dislike, but more of a it's not because.
Um, I don't think I have any specific dislikes. I feel like there are things that you're not supposed to like, but like I said, I mean, I don't specifically like Alaska, but like I think that that's kind of the point. Um, and I feel like there's like some nitpicky things of like, especially like with this being my first time reading this as mid 30s and interacting with it much more on like that side of my life versus having read this like when it came out and I was in high school. And so I feel like there's definitely like seeing a different side of it there of like I do wish the other adults were kind of presented more like the eagle, where like I think there's like a way of reading this where like the eagle is this doofus that kind of constantly gets taken advantage of, but then there's a side of the eagle that is very much not that and very much understands what his students need and is like very much like plugged in and taking care of them. And I do wish that like for us getting relatively few other adults in this book, I do wish that like the adults in this book were presented as much more like interesting mentor figures rather than like like the other teacher guy who's just like a complete joke until like the very end of just like I have no clue what we've done in this class for 90% of it, but then like you get good at the very end. Dr. Hyde. Like I sure wish that like he was just presented as like a more interesting like educational figure, like inspiring, rather than just like again, this person whose class I would have slept through every day.
Genuinely don't think I have any dislikes. I can't even get nitpicky enough about something. I think it was so good. And I think I might have enjoyed rereading it more than I enjoyed reading it the first time. So my only dislike is that it is getting banned so much. Uh, all right. So, as we have mentioned, Pudge really likes last words. Um, and there is a point where I believe in the day that he is dating Laura, they have a
They date for more than a
conversation,
day, barely.
like two.
Barely.
Like, they date for longer because he's not man enough to break up with her. Like,
Yeah.
The day that they're actively dating, they're having a conversation. Laura asks why he likes last words so much, and strange as it might seem, I'd never really thought about why. I don't know, I said, placing my hand against the small of her back. Sometimes just because they're funny. Like in the Civil War, a general named Sedgwick said they couldn't hit an elephant from this dis, and then he got shot. She laughed. But a lot of times, people die how they live, and so last words tell me a lot about who people were and why they became the sort of people biographies get written about. Um, did you have any favorite famous last words from the novel?
Oh, it's the I don't have it written down, but it's the one that they mention the most. It's I go to seek the great perhaps.
mhm.
It's I just like that one because they use it the most and I feel like it fits the theme. I mean, that's the point. Like that is like it's the one that they use to sort of sum up the whole story into a nice little package with a bow tie on
Mhm.
top of just like who Alaska is, who all of these characters are, of like just figuring out what life is supposed to be in their own ways, in their own chaotic messes of pranks and messed up childhoods and interests and hobbies and dating as teenage boys who really only date for one day and all of these things. It's just like, I'm here to figure something out, which is life. What that looks like, I don't know.
Mhm.
No one knows the answer. So that was the one that I liked the most.
Yeah. And I like that one because the meaning shifts throughout the book. It does like a
Yep.
great job of like being introduced like in like the first chapter or second chapter or something like that. Then its meaning to Pudge like shifts with the narrative. And so I think that that's
Mhm.
super cool. On a silly side, I liked the Millard Fillmore. The nourishment is palpable, or palatable, I guess. But like when he gets fed soup and then dies after like this tiny little bit of soup, I was like, I
Yep.
liked that one. That's a nice silly one that I enjoyed. Um, and then there was another one that I really liked, but I'm not seeing it on the list, so I will not worry about it.
Oh, I this one just came to me now, so I can't look it up now. But whatever the words are that Pudge uses to own the weekend warrior at the
Uh,
basketball game, when the colonel is like, name any president, and Pudge will
Mm.
know the last words. It was a good moment. And I feel like
Uh,
somewhat entertaining last words as well.
I don't remember. Is that
um,
McKinley?
oh, here we go. I got it. Um, that was the one I think that Cameron just
Oh,
mentioned.
it is. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that is the soup
Nourishment
If
one.
Pudge,
palatable.
yeah, you pick one dead American president. If Pudge doesn't know that guy's last words, truce. If he does, you spend the rest of your life lamenting the day you pissed in my shoe. Um, he goes on to mention Fillmore. Um,
Okay.
and then Pudge says when Fillmore was dying, he was super hungry, but his doctor was trying to starve his fever or whatever. Fillmore wouldn't shut up about wanting to eat, though, so finally the doctor gave him a tiny teaspoon of soup. And all sarcastic, Fillmore said, the nourishment is palatable, and then died. No truce. I like a search function.
um, all right. What are our thoughts on Miles' obsession with last words in general and also in relation to Alaska?
I mean, as I mentioned earlier, it makes sense for every teenager to have something that they're interested in. Sometimes it's gonna get weird, and that's okay. Everyone has a weird phase. I never left mine. Um, I don't think any of us left our weird phases in a good way. Um, when it comes to Alaska, I think it's his way of trying to connect with her, like sort of leading up to her like passing, essentially, of like maybe trying to impress her for better or for worse or anything else. But then you have this whole event where she passes away and no one knows essentially what her actual last words are. There's just the last words that she may or may not have said to Pudge or anyone else who she passed by as she was going to her car. So it's this like you have this main character who's obsessed with things that are known, as in famous people's last words, and then you have someone who to him is famous, i.e. Alaska, and he doesn't get the satisfaction of knowing what her last words are. So it's this very like rough moment for him on top of losing the person that he was or he thought he was in love with, of like not also getting the satisfaction of something else he was interested in as a result. So it's a lot of struggle of like for him not getting even just a little bit of that comfort that he had known.
Um, as Emma said, somebody you gotta have a weird thing, like, and so that's his. It's innocuous enough as far as it goes, but like, I do like that this is not necessarily him. Just like every single conversation is like a last words, um, and so like it comes up enough to be like clearly his thing, but like I don't necessarily feel like he's not constantly spouting a new person's last words. Um, the audiobook had like a little appendix at the end that kind of talked about some of the challenges with last words and like the fact that like people kind of make them up because who's going to refute them? Like the person's dead. And so I think that that's interesting. And like apparently the like I go to seek a great perhaps is like contested on if that was actually the person's last words. Um, and I think that it's super interesting to kind of have this be like this obsession that he has throughout the book, and then he just like as Emma said, like just can't get that closure for Alaska. Of like he doesn't know if these are her last words. He doesn't know like what went on. He doesn't have any of those answers and doesn't like. I think it's a cool way of like making that feel so personal for him as like here's like the one thing he wishes he could hold on to, but he's not able to. It's a cool way of tying in that theme.
Yeah. I think, yeah, like it is odd, but it's not like odd in a concerning way.
Yeah.
Like we have said that he's interested in last words. Um, but then I think when it comes to Alaska, it does become concerning and indicative of other things going on with him because he has been super obsessed with last words, but doesn't really care about the rest of a person's life. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like I think it was mentioned, like he'll get a biography, but just like flip to the end to see what the last words are. And the last words are kind of what defines a person to him. Um, and especially with like other people who like are creators and things like that. Like he doesn't read anything, any of like the thoughts and creations that they have put out into the world. He just tries to sum up a whole person in their last words. Um, and I think it is interesting how he says like a lot of times people die how they live. So last words do tell you a lot about a person. Um, but when it comes to someone who's like actually in his life, like no, he didn't know her. And I think not knowing her last words kind of magnifies that for him.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think the novel says about Alaska's last words?
Um, I don't know. I think it's an interesting time of just, I don't know.
What are her last words? Or like that he remember? It's the like
So
that
I
that
came
Pudge remembers.
prepared for the question
Yeah.
because having read this novel before, I knew that Miles was very obsessed with what her last words were. So I was specifically paying attention to the things that we were told Alaska was saying at the end. So the last words recorded in the novel that we actually like have dialogue of her saying is um, F word. She said, "Just get rid of the eagle for me," she said, her sobs childlike, half screams. "God, oh God, I'm so sorry." Those are the last words of dialogue we have from Alaska.
Mm.
Um, the last words that she said to Pudge directly that he continues mulling over are, "This is so fun, but I'm so sleepy. To be continued?"
Okay.
To be continued with a question mark. And I hate that. It is so heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I
um,
remembered it was like that
Yeah.
vibe of what she had said to Pudge, but I couldn't remember if it was like the like I'll like be right back or like so I just couldn't remember like the specifics. And so actually doing the audiobook, like I can't like flip back and check. And so um I do like that the last words that he gets are just like not the final last words. I do think that that's super like that we even find out about later on. And so I do like that as a concept of like he spends so much time on her last words and they're not even it. Like, let alone if she said anything in the car, which she definitely did. But like,
Yeah.
those are obviously not recorded because they're not heard by anyone. But like,
Yeah.
I do think that that's super interesting. And like, again, I love this like the vanity of it. Of it's like, oh, here's this thing. It means so much to me. He spends so much time mulling it over, and it's like it's not even the thing, kid.
He was kind of promised like something more to happen in the future in terms of the last conversation they had. Because as you said, Shanina, it was like more of a question rather than like a statement. But then it kind of results in this like, well, because it's a question, it could have gone either way, really. And it ended up going the less ideal way. So, like, of course he's going to be stuck on that. And it's not great.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, kind of what you were saying, and also what I mentioned a little bit earlier of just like, we don't actually know what her final words were because she was in the car. So whatever those were, I feel like is more what his interest is in terms of apparent final words, but because no one was there to record it, he doesn't know what they are. So there is some level of unhealthy attachment to final words there for
Mm-hmm.
Pudge when it comes to Alaska.
this is what I think the novel says about her last words. She potentially has four different last words. Um, the first one being her last recorded dialogue, where she is just screaming and in hysterics. And I think looking at those in view of a person dies how they lives is very sad.
Mm-hmm.
And just that she lived a life of turmoil and tragedy, and it's very sad. Um, to be continued. Um, again, very sad, um, with some heavy irony thrown in there that we know that it's not. Um, but also, I think something that Pudge does cling to and kind of works into his beliefs in that believing that people are gone but not really lost.
Mm-hmm.
And so she does continue in a manner. There is Dr. Hyde's final exam question. So he says, I have here Alaska's final. You recall that you were asked what the most important question facing people is, and how the three traditions we're studying this year addresses that question. This was Alaska's question. How will we ever get out of this labyrinth of suffering? So I think, yeah, having those words of hers highlighted in light of her death, how will we ever get out of this labyrinth of suffering? And having that have been a topic that she was discussing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So those are kind of enduring final words for her. To, yeah. Then I also think the memorial prank could be considered her last words as well, in that it's just an ongoing legacy of Alaska for the people who knew her as much as they were able and loved her.
Yeah. It's the last words. Like the prank is like the last words of who she wanted to be.
Yep.
Like not necessarily who she was, but like the part of her that like wanted that side of things to be her.
Who she dreamed of being rather than
Yes,
who she
that's
was
good.
in the moment. Yeah.
And speaking of the labyrinth, those were some last words that Alaska was interested in from Simon Bolivar, saying, how will I ever get out of this labyrinth? And Pudge says, I knew great last words when I heard them, and I made a mental note to get a hold of a biography of this Simon Bolivar fellow. Beautiful last words, but I didn't quite understand. So what's the labyrinth? I asked her. She said, that's the mystery, isn't it? Is the labyrinth living or dying? Which is he trying to escape, the world or the end of it? And then, as I was also just saying, Alaska comes to view the labyrinth as suffering. So, what does the novel discuss about the labyrinth, and what do you think the labyrinth is?
I have a quote to tack on. That was something that I marked. That is additionally about the labyrinth. And it is, you spend your whole life stuck in the labyrinth, thinking about how you'll escape it one day and how awesome it will be. And imagining that future keeps you going, but you never do it. You just use the future to escape the present. Which feeds into that, like, what you just mentioned of how Alaska views it as suffering, of like, the book really discusses the labyrinth as just like the life that we're in versus the life that we wish we could live, even if the life that we're currently in of that is quote unquote the labyrinth is something that we want to be doing. It's a more complex version of the grass is always greener on the other side. Of like, we're always going to have this moment of like, we are living our dream, but then, oh, it could always be better. And like, I could always, have a better job or, be in a relationship or, have these cool friends or X, Y, and Z of like, the labyrinth is all of this headspace that we get ourselves into of like, I am not living my best life rather than looking at the lives that we are living and realizing how fortunate we are.
Mm-hmm.
So then we dream of what we could have instead of appreciating what we do have.
Um, I 100% agree with Emma. Um, and then another way I thought of the labyrinth through this is like the labyrinth is like whatever fight you're currently in. And so it's like whatever like that the current struggle is, whatever the current challenge, like that's the labyrinth of like how do you get out of this like this one conflict or this one puzzle like and so it kind of shifts and obviously like with these being like a big thing from Alaska like for Pudge like the labyrinth is her, the labyrinth is the like why do people die, why do we like why are people taken so soon, because he can't let himself out of that question. And so um, I I think it's super interesting. Again, this is something that like gets introduced so early in the book, and then like very like very much gets pulled in as like a hey, remember this thing? Let's think about it some more. Um, and I really liked the way that this gets brought up, just because it's like the quote that you read of like him being like, "So what's the labyrinth?" Like is just so like kid that's had no real problems in his life. Like it's like it's pretty obvious what it is, dude. Like and like at least as like a metaphor, like of like a much better question like oh so what's the labyrinth for you, like would be a much more like telling question, but he just like can't comprehend that it's not one thing. And so
Mhm.
I think that's super interesting in a very cool way of like again kind of like the last words thing but like or kind of like the great beyond thing of like introducing a theme early on and then tying it back in throughout the book.
I'm like somewhat inclined to believe with Alaska in that the labyrinth is suffering, but just like she said at one point that like there's always suffering, like there's this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing, and like how true that is, like just the continual suffering of life. Um, but I think escaping the labyrinth could also be about escaping getting mired down in
Mm-hmm.
thinking of life as suffering. Um, and yeah, just failing to see what life really is. Um, yeah, escaping the labyrinth is still being able to live and experience joy and beauty in the face of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. And then for their final in Dr. Hyde's class, they had to answer, how will you personally ever get out of this labyrinth of suffering? And unlike Cameron, I would have loved Dr. Hyde's class. I loved every scene that he was in. I was just like, yes, tell me more, Dr. Hyde. Um, I genuinely think we could just have a whole podcast discussing all of the questions he asked them in class, and it would be great. Um, but I think the answers that we get from the students to that question is very telling as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like I I really do love the colonel's answer. Like he says, after all this time, it still seems to me like straight and fast is the only way out, but I choose the labyrinth. The labyrinth blows, but I choose it. Um, I just enjoy that. Um, and then Miles's answer is very long and is the finale of the book, but I like it all as well. Um, to sum up, basically, that people are important and can live on even after they die.
Mhm.
Any other thoughts on the labyrinth before we move on?
As a writer, it sure must be nice to just give you a way to hit everyone with the theme one last time in case anyone missed it. Like, that was my thought of like, I mean, I really like Pudge's answer too. It's great, but it is just so
Yeah.
funny how it is like literally the themes of the past 200 pages just condensed into like a page and something.
One little last
Yeah,
rant.
The little high school essay.
yeah, it's just so funny that
Yep.
like again,
Theme of the
good.
novel is
Yes, yeah. Of like if you were going like like this is something that's like if you were asked to like provide a summary, you could just like copy and paste this of like, oh, what are the themes of the book? Paste this answer. But I did think that this is super cool. And I think that this is a super interesting question. This is something that like I feel like I would have hated if like, hey, like my friend's dead and you're gonna ask us to like keep this thing hanging over us. But like obviously within like the themes of the book, that's a little different than in real life. But so I think it's a cool way of like presenting the challenges and the struggles, and like you mentioned like the Alaska's like last words being the prank. Um, but like I like that as the idea of like, well, you don't like you can't escape the sorrow until you find happiness somehow. Like that's how you like trying to get like getting closure is like how one of the ways out of the labyrinth, and like them through the prank, not that that makes everything better, but like that's that like a moment of healing for them and then a moment of escape of like remembering the positive of this person.
as we have discussed, this book has been banned. In the 2023 to 2024 school year, this book was the subject of 97 bans. 62 times it was banned outright, 32 times it was banned pending investigation, and 3 times it was banned by restriction. According to the PEN America Index of School Bans. According to the Canadian Library Challenges database, I could find one instance of it being challenged, but the item was retained. However, I would like to point out that in this upcoming school year, there have been some ministerial orders in my province, and this book is in danger of being banned. Not only because of that one scene, but because of a conversation had by page 15. So it is the first time we meet Alaska, and she tells a hilarious story of what happened to her over the summer about a part of her body being grabbed.
Oh,
And that goes against the new guidelines that our school libraries have received. So page 15.
I could go on a whole rant about how that's a yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I could talk a lot about that.
Oh,
mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Unfortunately, a very real experience a lot of teenagers and young women have. Hiding it is not going to make it any less of a problem. Ugh.
the one thing we don't want to get me started on even more than talking about how Looking for Alaska is a banned book is about the restrictions that are coming in my progress. I have and will again go off.
Yep.
Yeah.
But right now we're talking about Looking for Alaska. I found the scene so funny when they were getting the speaker ready for the prank. Um, I'm just gonna read it because it's so hilarious because it is just 100% how these kinds of conversations go. Um, the speaker we picked is a friend of Miles's dad, Longwell said, Dr. William Morse. He's a professor at a university down in Florida, and he studies adolescent sexuality. Aiming for controversy, are we? Oh no, I said. I've met Dr. Morse. He's interesting, but he's not controversial. He just studies the way that adolescents' understanding of sex is still changing and growing. I mean, he's opposed to premarital sex. Well, what's his phone number? I gave the eagle a piece of paper and he walked to a phone on the wall and dialed. Yes, hello. I'm calling to speak with Dr. Morse. Okay, thanks. Hello, Dr. Morse. I have Miles Halter here in my home and he tells me, great, wonderful. Well, I was wondering. The eagle paused, twisting the cord around his finger. Wondering, I guess, whether you, just so long as you understand that these are impressionable young people, we wouldn't want explicit discussions. Excellent, excellent. I'm glad you understand. You too, sir. See you soon. The eagle hung up the phone smiling and said, good choice. He seems like a very interesting man.
Yeah. Teenagers definitely not having any sort of conversations around these things. We better make sure that they don't see anything.
Right?
Like,
They're so impressionable. Nothing explicit, please.
yeah.
They're definitely not having conversations outside of adult supervision about these kinds of things either.
Yeah.
Definitely not. But let's definitely make sure they can't read books about these things.
All right?
That would be the real tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
You mean books that show them in a healthy scenario how to and not to handle situations that they might find themselves in?
If we simply believe that these situations don't exist,
Yeah.
Then they won't happen.
what is the need?
Yeah.
Have healthy conversations with your kids, people.
All right. So, what messages does this book contain for teens? And are they valuable? I also have a little bit of a shout out. My copy of the book also had like a little Q&A with John Green, and one of the questions was, it did in fact say spoiler redacted, but I think that we can say here, was Alaska's death a suicide, an intentional suicide? And John Green's answer to that was, I still don't know whether spoiler redacted was intentional. When I started writing the book, I knew that neither I as a writer nor you as a reader would ever get inside Blue Citrus that night. I wrote the book that way because at the time I had a lot of questions, big questions about suffering and loss and faith and despair that could not be answered. And I wanted to know whether it is possible to live a hopeful life in a world riddled with ambiguity, whether we can find a way to go on even when we don't get answers to questions that haunt us. Which I think wonderfully sums up a lot of the overarching messages of Looking for Alaska.
Yep.
Um,
And I think as
So-
much
Yeah.
as like I can give him a hard time for the like escaping the labyrinth just being like tell us the theme of like I
Yeah.
really liked this. I love that we never get this answer in the book and that like the Pudge and the Colonel have to like live with the ambiguity of it, and thus so do we. I think that that's like a very interesting piece of art that we as like readers have to like struggle with. And I liked that. I love that. I mean, obviously it's intentional because it's what's in the book, but like I love that that's something that like setting out with of like, hey, like he as the author is like, I don't know, and I don't need to give an answer. Like,
Yeah. And I think it does also play well into like, I mean, this whole question of like what messages does the book have for teenagers of like it is an important detail that we don't know if it was intentional or not really sort of plays into like the story does focus a lot on suffering and like
mhm,
struggling with loss and important people in our lives passing away. But that detail also I think helps a lot of teenagers handle with the added, layer of sometimes we're going to lose things and we don't entirely know why we lose them
mhm,
or how we lose them. And we may never know the answers to those questions. And that is just the way that life works sometimes is we're going to lose things and we don't know why, but it's okay to grieve over those losses anyway, and it's okay that like those impact us in a way that we didn't expect. And I think it is a good sort of message to be giving teenagers of like your experiences are valid and
mhm,
the way that you interact with life is valid. And the pain that you're experiencing in ultimately these huge scenarios of losing people important to you is important and should not be ignored.
mhm.
I think there's a lot of important messages in this book, and it does deal with some very heavy and big questions, um, like questions about life and pain and death and grief. Um, I think those are kind of like the big core messages, and yeah, are just so important for teens to read and know that when they're going through those things, they're not alone. Um, I think it also speaks really well about faith and belief.
Mhm.
Um, I think like it presents organized religion as something that people can explore if they want to, um, but also that if that's not, that faith and belief is still something that you're going to have in one way or another. Um, and like Pudge's beliefs changed and I think really came to shape throughout the novel. Um, just what he came to believe about people and life and death and what happens after death. Um, and yeah, just that those are big, important things for people to be exploring. And then, since book banners seem to think that this book is all about risky behaviors and encouraging wild things, um, I think the messages that it does have about sexuality are just
Mhm.
that um, being curious about those things is a normal part of development, and um, things are going to be awkward and uncomfortable, and um, that too is just life.
Yeah. Also, if I was John Green, I would have slapped a sticker on this of like banned in X number of places because of this, and put that in bookstores near high schoolers and like racked up sales. Like of like it's the most like benign like um depiction, and it's just so funny that like that it's what people are so like hung up on, again with that, with the mindset of like, oh, teens are well aware, like it being in the book is not how any of them in this age bracket are learning about this, like and so I just think that that's so funny.
Was there anything else that stood out to you? Any themes or quotes or other comments that you would like to make?
Yeah, I have a quote. It's a paragraph. It's after Alaska dies. It's just something that stood out to me. Um, Everything looked the same, but more still. The weekday warriors still sat on the benches outside the library, but their gossip was quiet, understated. The cafeteria clamored with the sounds of plastic trays against wooden tables and forks scraping plates, but any conversations were muted. But more than the noiselessness of everyone else was the silence where she should have been, the bubbling, bursting, storytelling Alaska. But instead, it felt like those times when she had withdrawn into herself, like she was refusing to answer how or why questions, only this time for good. And it was just like that just stood out to me of like a like it's the same feeling that you get when you go back to your hometown after being away at college for so long of like this place is super familiar, but also things have changed while I was gone. Of like there's a kind of loss there that is going to hang in the air even though life moves on. And I thought that paragraph captured it really well.
I have two quotes. One's more silly, but it was they love their hair because they're not smart enough to love something more interesting. And like, man, if I have never felt that way about like a ton of people, like it's like, oh, this is the thing that you choose to be like a super interested in. Cool, we're good. Like, I got places to be and it's anywhere else if this is how you live your life. And so that was one that I really identified with, especially as someone who like has never like been super interested in sports or never been like super interested in cars or like workouts or whatever. Like, it's always just been so funny. That's like, man, you can't tell me like any interesting facts other than the amount of weight that you benched. Like, I'm happy for you. And then the other one that's a bit more serious, but it's a really cool. This is a Pudge describing Alaska, and he says, "If people were rain, I was a drizzle, and she was a hurricane." I thought that was just a super interesting like visual, and like is a very cool like set of imagery that we get here describing again Pudge, the generic high school student, and then like Alaska. And so that was something that I thought was very interesting, like stuck with me throughout the book of like Alaska is this like force of nature at the school. And then the rest of the people are just a drizzle.
I loved that too. I spent a lot of time thinking about that quote this read
Mm.
through. I think also just that, like, especially with the long, rainy
Mm-hmm.
season that they went through, and I'm like, how the drizzle can kind of last a really long time, but the hurricanes come with force, but also kind of leave.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Right. Final thoughts on Looking for Alaska and your verdict on, do you think this book deserves to be banned?
Great book, should definitely not be banned. It's a silly idea.
Okay, this might be a hot take, but if we ban every book about anything bad, kids will never do anything bad. Call me crazy. Like, we'll just ban all media ever, and nothing
Just
bad will ever happen just as
get
broadly at
rid of
human history.
all of it. Get rid of
Like,
all of it.
yeah, like nothing could ever go wrong. And so, yeah, I get to like, again, to me, this it's absurd that this is banned. Like, it's such like if this was like smut, like okay, like, but like it's just so not that. And the fact that like this ends up on, again, has a message that I think would be extremely important for a lot of teenagers to like read and think about. The fact that like people want to ban it for something that is like so benign, like, is just crazy to me. And then yeah, really like this book.
I would like to note that there is in my copy, um, so there's a snippet from Turtles All the Way Down, which is one of his more recent books. And then after that, when included in all of like the credits, so to speak, there is a footnote from John that reads, Julie was also like, you should really use the word deadpan a bit less often in this novel. Sadly, I ignored that advice. And I think that's funny. Those are the last words of this book are, sadly, I ignored that advice.
Yes, I think this is an amazing book, deals with very important topics, and absolutely does not deserve to be banned.
So brave
Period.
of you to say.
Yeah.
So bold.
So
All right. Um, I have had such a good banned book summer with you guys.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic theme for this summer.
Yeah.
So good. Um, our next book club, I think, will be a fun one. Another first for us, our first play, um,
Mhm.
Hamlet by William Shakespeare. We'll be discussing on September 29th, in anticipation of on October 3rd coming out The Life of a Showgirl by Taylor Swift.
Let's go.
So
We'll
now
make
we will
Emma a Swifty yet.
be we will be super
Good luck
informed
with that.
and be able to understand all of the literary references in The Fate of Ophelia. So
Mm. I'm excited. It's been a long time since I've read Shakespeare. In fact, like I don't know if I've read Shakespeare since high school. And so I'm very excited for us to go and tackle, like, obviously such like an important work to like Western culture as Hamlet. So
I said this to the host earlier, but I will say it for the audience. I read Shakespeare for fun as a teenager, if that tells you anything about who I was. And I am proud of it.
and yes, I will add, for anyone intimidated by reading Shakespeare, Emma has informed me that there is a version called No Fear Shakespeare, which has
Yeah,
on one side the original Shakespearean English, and on the other side a modern English translation.
it's great.
So
I highly recommend it because then you get to see it translated for word, understand what's going on, but also see the original writing, which is cool because it's like you don't get you can see how things are translated into modern English, but then you can also use some critical thinking to like try and figure out what Shakespeare might have meant based on the Shakespearean English, and it's cool, and I highly recommend it. I'm a nerd. I have always been a nerd. These are the kinds of things I
nerd.
nerded out about as a teenager.
Well, thank you for joining us for Banned Book Summer and our discussion on Looking for Alaska. Just a reminder, you can find us at First Geek 411 on Facebook and Instagram. Join our Discord server. Shoot us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. Check out our Redbubble store. Watch live on our Twitch and YouTube. I'm Shanine. You can find me at Instagram at Hoot and Howl Tales, TALES.
I am not prepared with an I am not prepared on Instagram and Blue Sky and no more Twitter because I got rid of Twitter. Who needs Twitter? We don't. I don't. But pretty much Instagram is the only main social media, and then a lot of alternate options. I am there. You can find me.
Then you can find me around the internet as Huma Whittle, most active, of course, in Discord and then over on Blue Sky.
Read banned books.
Drink some water.
Pull a prank. We do not have time for post-show chat other than to say, if my count is correct, this is the 10th book, so it is time for another book club tier list as well. And so we'll need to figure out a time to do that. But
Here for it.
we are going to need to call the stream. So everyone, have a great night. We will catch you later. Bye.